When my son Owen was 12, he spent 43 consecutive Saturday mornings turning his bedroom into the safest place he knew. Every shelf, every framed drawing, every carefully labeled baseball card binder had a story behind it. The first thing he placed on the dresser wasn't a toy. It was a small cedar keepsake box his late grandfather had carved by hand when Owen was born. I still remember running my fingers across its smooth lid before we left for a 5-day anniversary trip with my husband. At exactly 2:17 p.m. that Tuesday, my sister erased almost all of it. 3 weeks later, that same cedar box sat alone on a folding table under fluorescent lights, and everyone in the room stopped talking when they saw what was inside. Here's what my sister never understood about that afternoon, or about everything that came before it. She believed she had sold old furniture and forgotten toys. What she actually sold was the last illusion that our family knew the difference between helping someone and taking control of their life. My name is Melissa. I'm 39 years old, and I work as a pediatric occupational therapist in Columbus, Ohio. My job has taught me that children build confidence one small victory at a time. They don't just grow into themselves overnight. They collect pieces of identity through routines, favorite objects, familiar spaces, and tiny rituals adults often overlook. Owen understood that better than most adults I knew. The cedar keepsake box became our quiet ritual after my father passed away 6 years earlier. Every birthday, every school achievement, every meaningful ticket stub or handwritten note went inside it. A worn movie ticket from the first film we watched together after Grandpa died. His 5th grade spelling bee ribbon. A tiny seashell from Lake Michigan. None of it had resale value. Every piece had memory. My family, unfortunately, had always measured worth differently. My younger sister, Dana, believed everything had a price. She often walked through other people's homes talking about resale values, renovations, or decluttering opportunities. If she spotted an old chair, she'd estimate what it might bring online. If she saw boxes in a garage, she'd wonder who would buy them. She loved repeating the same sentence whenever anyone questioned her decisions. "You'll thank me later." For years, everyone laughed as though it were harmless. I laughed too. Looking back, that may have been my biggest mistake. Dana had rearranged my mother's kitchen without asking. She once donated 3 bags of our aunt's clothes because they looked outdated. She sold an old dining table that belonged to our grandparents before my uncle even knew it had been listed. Every single time, someone eventually sighed and said, "Well, what's done is done." Eventually, I started saying it too. Owen never liked when Aunt Dana visited. He wasn't rude. That wasn't his nature. He simply became quieter. Before she arrived, he'd carefully close the lid of the cedar keepsake box and slide it into the back corner of his bookshelf. I asked him once why he always hid it. He shrugged. "I don't know," he answered softly. "She always picks things up and says they're just stuff." At the time, I smiled and told him Aunt Dana simply looked at the world differently. I wish I hadn't. Before leaving for our anniversary trip, I checked every detail twice. On Sunday evening at 7:42 p.m., I texted Dana a short list: water the plants every other day, collect the mail, and make sure the porch packages stayed inside if anything was delivered. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and wrote, "Got it." The next morning, I printed the same list and left it on the kitchen counter. My husband watched me tape it beside the coffee maker. Even then, Dana glanced toward the hallway that led to Owen's bedroom, smiled in that familiar way, and casually said, "You'll thank me later." I remember rolling my eyes instead of asking what she meant. At the time, it sounded like another one of her harmless comments. It wasn't. Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed while my husband and I were eating lunch at a small cafe overlooking Lake Erie. It was exactly 2:17 p.m. I smiled when I saw Dana's name, expecting a picture of the garden or a question about the mail. Instead, I read 5 words that made my stomach turn cold. I sold everything. Got a good price. Below it were 6 photos. Owen's room. Empty. The bookshelf was gone. His desk was gone. The navy comforter my mother had sewn for his 10th birthday had disappeared. His baseball posters had been peeled from the walls, leaving pale rectangles where sunlight hadn't reached in years. The last picture showed strangers loading furniture into a pickup truck. Dana added another message. Asterisk, I made almost $3,480. The room looks so much bigger now. Asterisk. Then, almost as an afterthought, she wrote the sentence I'd heard my entire life. You'll thank me later. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. The waiter asked if everything was all right. I nodded automatically while staring at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. I called Dana immediately. She answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. Did you see the pictures? What did you do? I fixed the room. You had absolutely no permission to touch Owen's room. She laughed lightly. Oh, Melissa, relax. Kids outgrow junk every 6 months. Where is things? I sold most of them. Donated a few broken pieces. My son's keepsake box? There was a pause. I think it went with the dresser. I stood so quickly my chair scraped across the cafe floor. What do you mean you think? I didn't inventory every little box, she replied calmly. You'll thank me later. The buyers wanted complete bedroom sets. My husband, Daniel, had already seen my face lose its color. Without asking questions, he quietly paid the bill. We spent the next 4 hours driving home. Neither of us spoke much. Every mile made the silence heavier. When we finally opened the front door shortly after 6:40 p.m., the house felt unfamiliar. The hallway echoed. Owen raced upstairs before I could stop him. I heard his footsteps slow, then stop completely. No scream. No crying. Just silence. When I reached the doorway, he was standing in the middle of the empty room. Only the mattress remained on the floor because, apparently, no buyer had wanted it without the bed frame. Sunlight spilled across blank carpet where bookshelves had stood only days before. The outline of his favorite reading chair was still visible in the faded fibers. Owen walked over to the empty corner where the cedar keepsake box had always rested. He touched the shelf. Then he quietly asked, "Did Grandpa's box get sold too?" I couldn't answer. He nodded once, almost as if he'd expected it. I should have taken it with us. Those words hurt more than any tears could have. Children aren't supposed to comfort themselves for adults' failures. As I watched him sit cross-legged on the bare floor, memories began lining up differently inside my mind. Dana hadn't suddenly crossed a line. She had been crossing small ones for years. The Christmas she borrowed Owen's new bicycle to give her neighbor's son a ride without asking. The afternoon she cleaned out my pantry and threw away homemade soup because she said expiration dates mattered more than sentiment. The weekend she donated my father's work jackets before I had sorted through them. Each time I'd accepted the apology that wasn't really an apology. Each time someone said, "That's just Dana." And every single time, I let peace matter more than boundaries. Standing in Owen's empty room, I finally admitted something I hadn't wanted to face. I wasn't only the person who'd been wronged. By staying quiet for so many years, I'd helped teach my son that the people who loved him were allowed to decide what parts of his life belonged to him. That night, after Owen had fallen asleep on the mattress in his nearly empty room, I started making phone calls. The first was to my mother. She listened without interrupting while I explained exactly what had happened, including the text message, the missing keepsake box, and the money Dana had proudly collected. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then she sighed. "Melissa, your sister was only trying to help. She entered my house without permission and sold my son's belongings. I know it looks bad, but making this into a family fight won't bring anything back." I closed my eyes. "So that's it? What do you want me to say?" "I wanted you to say it was wrong." Another silence. Instead, she quietly replied, "Sometimes it's easier to let things go." I thanked her for listening and ended the call. 10 minutes later, I called my older brother, Eric. His response was almost identical. "Dana gets carried away. She stole from my son." I wouldn't use that word. "What word would you use?" He hesitated. "Impulsive." I looked around Owen's stripped bedroom. Empty walls. One mattress. A single lamp sitting on the floor because the nightstand had been sold. There was nothing impulsive about organizing buyers, collecting money, removing furniture, and hauling away years of memories. That required planning. Eric lowered his voice. Just don't make it a thing, Mel. Families survive by moving on. After we hung up, I realized something that should have been obvious years earlier. Everyone kept asking me to protect the peace. No one had ever asked Dana to protect the people. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time it was Mrs. Alvarez, our next-door neighbor. She had watched our house while we were away. "I just found out what happened," she said before I could speak. "Did you know? I saw trucks Monday morning. I asked your sister whether you were remodeling." My heart sank. "What did she tell you?" "She said you wanted everything gone before you got back." Mrs. Alvarez paused. I believed her. "You couldn't have known." "No," she answered firmly. "But now that I do know, I'm angry." She explained that one of the buyers lived only 6 streets away. Another had purchased several boxes of books through an online marketplace using his real profile. "I wrote down license plates because strange vehicles were coming and going," she added. "Old habit from my neighborhood watch days." I almost laughed through the exhaustion. "You actually kept them?" "Of course." She read every number slowly while I copied them into a notebook. When she finished, she said something no one else had been willing to say. "Melissa, your sister didn't make a mistake. She made a choice." Those 6 words settled over me like solid ground. For the first time since 2017 that afternoon, I didn't feel crazy. Someone else saw exactly what had happened. The next morning, I called Dana before doing anything else. I told myself I would give her one final opportunity to fix what she had broken. "Dana," I said evenly, "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for cooperation. Tell me who bought Owen's things, return the $3,480, and help me recover whatever we can. That's all." She laughed, not loudly, but with the same confidence she always carried. "I'm not refunding money I've already earned. You earned it by selling property that wasn't yours." "Oh, please." "I mean it." Her voice cooled immediately. "Listen carefully, Melissa. If you accuse me publicly, I'll tell everyone you asked me to clean the room. Mom and Eric will back me. People already think you struggle with letting go of clutter. Don't start something you can't finish." She didn't stop there. "If you involve lawyers, don't expect invitations to Thanksgiving. Don't expect anyone to choose your side. And don't drag Owen into adult problems just because you're emotional." When the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. For the first time in years, I understood that I wasn't arguing with someone who believed she was helping. I was dealing with someone who believed being confident mattered more than being accountable. I didn't call Dana again. Instead, I stopped trying to earn fairness inside a family system that had never required it from her. Mrs. Alvarez's notes led us to nearly every buyer within 3 days. Some had already resold what they'd purchased, but many were shocked to learn the truth. One couple returned Owen's bookshelf without accepting a single dollar. A retired teacher brought back 2 boxes of books and apologized even though she had done nothing wrong. Another family had purchased the old desk. When they heard it had belonged to a 12-year-old boy, they insisted we take it home. The cedar keepsake box was different. No one had seen it. That was the only item we couldn't trace. Watching strangers show more honesty than my own relatives changed something in me. I decided our next family gathering would not happen in my parents' dining room, where everyone silently accepted Dana's version of reality. Instead, Daniel and I invited the people who had helped rebuild Owen's room. Neighbors, friends, teachers, and even 2 of the buyers came for a Saturday afternoon barbecue. Before sending the invitation to the family group chat, I wrote one message. Then I deleted it. Asterisk, if protecting Dana matters more than protecting my son, don't bother coming. Asterisk. Too angry. I started again. Asterisk, after everything you've defended, none of you deserve to walk through my front door. Asterisk. I erased that one too. Finally, I sent the only message I could live with. Asterisk, we're rebuilding more than a bedroom this Saturday at 2 p.m. If you'd like to spend time with Owen and help create new memories, you're welcome. No arguments. No explanations. Just respect. Asterisk. Dana answered 23 seconds later. Asterisk, do whatever makes you feel better. Asterisk. Nothing else. Saturday arrived warm and imperfect. Someone burned the first batch of hamburgers. The folding table leaned slightly because one leg wouldn't lock. Children ran through the yard with water balloons while adults carried furniture upstairs one careful piece at a time. Owen directed everything himself. The bookshelf goes by the window. The desk faces the tree. He wasn't replacing his old room. He was designing his own. Late that afternoon, one of the marketplace buyers pulled into the driveway holding a small cardboard box. "I think this belongs to your son." Inside was the cedar keepsake box. It had slipped into the bottom drawer of the dresser he'd purchased. He hadn't discovered it until that morning. Owen held the box against his chest without saying a word. That quiet smile was worth more than every dollar Dana had collected. A week later, my Aunt Linda called. She had attended my parents' dinner instead of our barbecue. It was beautiful, she admitted softly, but it felt empty. Everyone talked carefully. Nobody mentioned Owen. Nobody laughed. Then she added, "Your house sounded alive." Winning didn't feel the way I had imagined. I hadn't lost only trust in my sister. I had accepted that my relationship with my mother and brother would probably never return to what I once believed it had been. A few days later, Aunt Linda quietly shared something else. Dana has always believed that if she controlled every situation first, nobody could disappoint her. It explained her behavior. It didn't excuse it. Understanding someone's fear doesn't require surrendering your boundaries. Almost 3 months later, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Dana stood on the porch holding a plain paper bag. I asked her to wait outside while I finished helping Owen mount a new shelf. For the first time in our lives, she waited. When I finally invited her inside, she tried her familiar smile. "I think everyone's made this bigger than it needed to be." It landed nowhere. Then she sighed. "I've already apologized." "You've defended yourself," I answered. "That's different." She looked toward Owen's room. What if he never forgives me? It was the first honest question she'd asked since any of this began. "My condition isn't about me," I said. "If you want a place in this family, you rebuild trust with Owen at his pace. You don't ask him to make you feel better." She nodded. Later that afternoon, she and Owen spent nearly an hour alone in his room. I never asked what either of them said. Some conversations belong to the people who earn them. 6 months passed. A new tradition quietly replaced the old one. On the first Sunday of every month, we placed one meaningful object into the cedar keepsake box, not because it was expensive, but because it represented something we'd lived through together. One afternoon, Dana arrived carrying a handwritten note instead of a purchased gift. She asked Owen where he thought it belonged. She didn't touch the box herself. She waited until he handed it to her. That small pause told me more than another apology ever could. Today, Owen is 13, planning shelves for model airplanes instead of baseball trophies. His room keeps changing because he's growing, not because someone else decides its value. The cedar box still sits in the same corner where he chose to place it after everything was returned. Sometimes healing looks dramatic. More often, it looks like someone finally asking permission before they pick up what was never theirs. Because my sister sold $3 for $80 worth of belongings in a single afternoon at 2:17 p.m., but she couldn't put a price on the one thing that finally changed our family forever. The safest home is the one where love is never mistaken for ownership.